The Economic Roundtable is wrapping up as we speak. There was a bit of biffo, as I just said, and I'll go to the Treasurer's press conference live later this hour. But the overwhelming dilemma for the Albanese government today has been the fallout over Israel, the war in Gaza, Anthony Albanese's vow to recognise the non-existent state of Palestine, the government's banning of a visit by an Israeli MP, and the tit-for-tat response from Israel, including the attack on Albanese by Benjamin Netanyahu. The Israeli Prime Minister ramped it up overnight in an exclusive interview with Sharry Markson.
Why do you believe history will remember him as a weak politician?
Well, look, I'm sure he has a reputable record as a public servant, but I think his record is forever tarnished by the weakness that he showed in the face of these Hamas terrorist monsters. You know, when the worst terrorist organization on earth, these savages who murdered women, raped them, beheaded men, burnt babies alive in front of their parents, and took hundreds of hostages. When these people congratulate the Prime Minister of Australia, you know something is wrong.
Yeah, that full interview will air on Sharry tonight. That's 8 o'clock right here on Sky News. I've seen the whole thing and you don't want to miss it. For instance, I'll show you another bit where Netanyahu explains that this really is not just Israel's fight, but one that belongs to Australia and all of Western civilization.
What will it take to restore the friendship between Israel and Australia?
There's been a great underlying friendship there for over a century. I think it's been gone astray because I think leaders did not show the strength and conviction that they should have when we're fighting the war of Western civilization against these barbarians.
Look, as I said last night, the Israeli Prime Minister is right. Albanese has been weak. And the incendiary language of his Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke, the demonisation of Israel by Burke, Albanese, Penny Wong and others, can only intensify the scourge of anti-Semitism here and encourage terrorists around the world. The Albanese government has given succour to terrorists. It's trashed the relationship with Israel. It's put further distance between us and our key ally, the United States. And it's backing a diplomatic path that is both inept and dangerous. But of course, the government is defiant.
And I think much of what the Israeli Prime Minister said in the comments I had seen were frankly ridiculous. But, you know, we're not going to focus on those.
Well, no, he won't focus on those because none of what Benjamin Netanyahu said was ridiculous. If Mark Butler was right, he might have actually identified a point and explained why it was ridiculous. But still, if that was a tepid defence, have a look at the critique from the opposition leader.
Look, I'm not going to go to the individual comments that other Prime Ministers are making or the particular features of this dialogue at this time. But what I am going to say is that Anthony Albanese has mismanaged the relationship, and that mismanagement clearly has consequences. But what matters today is that we work hard together to get the relationship back on an even keel. Really?
That's all she's got to say? When we have a dangerously weak government, the last thing we need is a mealy-mouthed opposition. Our Prime Minister is being praised by the bloodthirsty terrorists of Hamas while he's at odds with Israel and the United States. Let that sink in. And the opposition leader says Albanese should get the relationship with Israel back on an even keel. That's all. Actually, I think Australia needs to stand firmly against terrorism, against Hamas, and in favour of the survival of Israel. It needs to stop banning mainstream Israeli visitors and start banning Islamist hate preachers. It needs to stop fueling anti-Israeli sentiment by demonising Israel and repeating Hamas propaganda. It needs to stop repeating lies about civilians being bombed and children being starved. There is so much misinformation around. Look at one of the latest examples. A woman taken from Gaza to Italy for medical treatment and dying there, with stacks of media coverage earlier this week suggesting she was malnourished and starving. It was a tragic death, of course, but there was no starvation. The woman was suffering from leukemia. And of course, she only got out of Gaza to seek better treatment, courtesy of Israel. You literally cannot believe much of what the media and many politicians are telling you. And just one thing about Benjamin Netanyahu's response to Anthony Albanese. It shows that Australia matters. As I've been saying for 2 years now, while we are not a huge player on the ground in the Middle East, our voice in global diplomacy used to be respected. But by abandoning Israel and distancing ourselves from the Americans, Australia is diminished. We've backtracked from our core values. We're throwing our lot now in with the weak Europeans and the United Nations crowd. Weakness is provocative, especially in the face of Islamist extremists. So this is a reckless retreat by Australia.